Megan Lewis felt the hum of the tires on the asphalt as her car sped through the remote backroads of Northern California. The rhythmic sound was the only companion in the pitch-black night. It was nearing 9 p.m., and the sky was inky, filled with stars that seemed to watch over her in their silent way. She had hours to go before she reached the cabin, a remote, rustic place she'd rented to get away from it all. The stress of her corporate life had been relentless, the recent divorce only adding to the pile of pressures she'd carried for too long. A week of solitude, cut off from the world, was what she needed. She rolled the window down, letting the cool night air rush in. It was refreshing, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. She'd chosen this area specifically because it was far from everything. No neighbors, no cell service, no distractions, just the forest and the quiet. For the first time in years, she could take a deep breath. The GPS had been unreliable since she left the main highway, and Megan was now relying on handwritten directions she'd copied from the rental company. The drive was supposed to take another 3 hours, but as the roads became narrower and darker, she felt her resolve waver. The isolation, which had been so appealing in theory, now settled heavily on her chest, the silence of the night more oppressive than freeing. She glanced at the clock. Another hour had passed. Her shoulders ached, her eyes drooping as fatigue began to creep in. She reached for an energy drink in the cup holder, trying to stave off the drowsiness. With each passing mile, the dense forest seemed to swallow the road, the trees looming closer to the car, their branches twisting overhead like bony fingers. Just as she was beginning to lose herself in the hypnotic sway of the road, something caught her eye. At first, she dismissed it, blaming her tired mind for conjuring up shapes in the darkness. But then it moved again, a shadow, just above the steering wheel. She blinked, focusing her eyes on the source. Hanging from the roof, suspended by the finest thread, was a spider, a grotesque thing with a fat, bulbous body the size of a large marble. Its legs, impossibly long and thin, seemed to twitch with every tiny movement. The body was a shadow in the dark, with brief flickers of shiny black against the light of the headlights, revealing its hairy legs with each sway as it slowly descended. Megan's throat went dry. A wave of nausea hit her as her body went rigid, muscles locking up in an instinctive primal fear. She was never good with spiders. No, spiders were her worst nightmare. This one, however, was no ordinary house spider. It was a monster, creeping slowly, deliberately, from the inside of the roof down toward her hands on the steering wheel. She let out a strangled gasp, her heart hammering in her chest. The headlights illuminated the road ahead in an eerie tunnel of light, but Megan couldn't look away from the creature. It swayed gently with the movement of the car, coming closer and closer. Her pulse quickened, hands clenching the wheel. She wanted to slam on the brakes, to throw herself out of the car, but the road was narrow, winding. A mistake could send her careening off the edge of a ravine or down into a ditch. Her thoughts spiraled. She couldn't keep driving like this, not with that thing lowering itself toward her. What do you suppose happens next? Does she succumb to her panic, or does she manage to keep her cool?